We see it often in spiritual circles, people who have profound awakenings and then through their experiences come to believe that they are somehow special or important, maybe even the one. Sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's more subtle. They seem composed, charismatic, maybe even radiant. They speak of unity, sacred missions, and divine downloads. But beneath it all, there's a quiet belief. I am chosen. I am special. So what's really happening here? Why is this such a common trap on the spiritual path? That's what we're going to look at today. I feel well positioned to speak about this because I've lived it. My spiritual journey started as a secret. I was a teenager in the 90s, part of a small group of friends who began exploring the unseen. We hardly told anybody. We were studying, partying, having relationships, like nothing was unusual. And at the time, it felt like we were being initiated into something important, something big that was unfolding. And over time, this feeling intensified. Synchronicities began showing up everywhere. Books that had just the information I was looking for would appear magically. Numbers danced meaningfully around me like a sacred language, and dreams bled into waking life. And as the journey deepened, I began experiencing altered states. Visioning, dreaming, dimension traveling. And in one of those states, I experienced something that shocked me. It shocked me to my very core. I saw that everything revolved around me. I had a visceral sense of being the center of the universe. It was all me. There was nothing outside of me, just me in different forms. And it wasn't just an idea or a concept, it was a felt reality in that moment. Blissful, overwhelming, awesome, and deeply, deeply terrifying. And in that moment, it seemed clear, whether I liked it or not, there is no one but me. I am the one. So why does spiritual awakening veer into spiritual grandiosity? I believe that there's two key reasons. And the first one is tragic. And that's the fact that most of us along the way have come to swallow a terrible false belief. And that false belief is that somehow we're not worthy, that we're just not good enough. And this belief is so painful and so dangerous to the concept of self that it gets buried deep down into the unconscious. But those parts of us who believe it don't disappear. They too get pushed away into the unconscious with the beliefs that they're entangled with. They wait in the shadows. They ache. They long to be seen. And so when awakening comes and we open to a beautiful vastness that reflects our true sacred nature, these wounded parts hiding in the shadows grab onto it like starving children. I know for myself, I was really unaware of the wounds I carried at a subconscious level. And so it was really easy for me to be oblivious to this level of the experience. And without awareness, that pain of being less than can easily flip into a fantasy of being more than. And these wounded aspects, still aching, still carrying the pain, no longer have to hide in the darkness. Instead, now they can hide beneath the cloak of divinity. And so now let's look at the second reason. And this will explain why it's so easy to fall into this trap, why it's so compelling. And the reason is because there's truth to it. When I touched those altered states, when I felt myself at the center of the universe, it wasn't metaphorical. It was a visceral, undeniable experience. Everything around me felt like it was orbiting my awareness. Every sound, every vision, every breath, it was all me. But here's the insight that came a little bit later. What I had seen was true, but it wasn't the truth. It was a truth. The perception wasn't wrong. It was just partial. Because when I reached a more expanded state of awareness, I could see clearly that every single one of us is the center of the universe from our own vantage point. And this isn't a metaphor. Even science backs this. In cosmology, the universe isn't expanding from one single point. It's expanding everywhere, all at once. So each observer sees themselves as the center of their own observable universe. You are the center, I am the center, everyone is the center from their own unique perspective. We're all divine sparks, not in a hierarchy, but in a web, equally vital, equally central, equally sacred. The danger is when unhealed pain hijacks this cosmic truth and uses it to fill a void that only love and integration can truly fill. The more small and insignificant a part of us has felt, the more likely it is to latch on to the majesty of the awakening experience. And when those wounded parts hide unchecked beneath grandiose beliefs, there's a risk of distortion, of isolation, and spiritual bypassing dressed up as enlightenment. But there's another way, a gentler way, a truer way. When we understand that the story of our specialness is actually a distortion that is not helpful to ourselves or to others, we can instead turn towards the ache that's beneath it. And when we do, something shifts. We find the frightened child who once believed that we were less than, and we hold them and we connect with them. And we remind them, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to become the one to be worthy. You already are and always were irreplaceable. And from this place, awakening becomes not about rising above, but about coming home. Home to ourselves, to each other, to the mystery that we're a part of. Awakening is real. It's a powerful process that teaches us that we are divine. But the point isn't to become the one. It is to remember that we're all in this together, all fractals of the same source, all centers of creation, learning to love more deeply, more wholly, more fully. When you meet that hidden part of you, the one who once believed you were less than, and welcome them home, you no longer need to be better than. You no longer want to be better than, because you already are and always were enough. And isn't it far more beautiful to walk this mystery side by side as part of the all than to stand alone above it? Again, thank you to everyone who's made it this far. I have this idea that I want to start creating 2 parts to the videos. So there'll be the first part that'll be more curated, and a second section that's just more flowing, and I just speak about whatever. I'm gonna keep it short. I actually have a cold. I'm not sure if that's obvious, but I'm feeling a bit under the weather. And it's spring here in Australia. I don't know if I've mentioned that, so people might notice my accent. My accent's actually Canadian, but I've been living in Australia since 1997. So I've spent more time in Australia now than I have in Canada. I know that everybody here thinks my accent still sounds very Canadian, but my Canadian family and friends, they can hear the Australian, so I just see it as I've got my own accent. But just in case you're wondering, that will explain it. Yeah, so it's spring here, and I just want to get outside and soak up nature. And nature just helps with everything. So that's where I'm going. Thank you for following along. I really appreciate everybody who subscribed. I was enjoying really having a very small audience and just sharing, just treating it like a sandbox. And I'm still learning and growing, but I know that process will just keep going. So I'm at a point now where I'm welcoming more people in. So if you do feel to share this or to subscribe, all much appreciated. Likes and comments really help with the algorithm, help get the message out there. Yeah, so just finishing off from my heart to yours. Thank you. And let's come together to build a future built on the foundation of love.